So this is Attorney Rie, and she is going to be calling Dylan Zimmerman to the stand.
Defense would like to call Dylan Zimmerman to the stand. Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Dylan Zimmerman, and I am a lifelong resident of Alki City, and I have been managing the Maryland Park Apartments for 8 years.
Describe your apartments for the jury.
The apartments are a group of 6 3-story buildings with 10 units on each floor and are tightly clustered. The layout is simple, and each unit has 2 bedrooms that are laid out the same. You enter the building in the center where a goofy-looking awning that's supposed to represent the sunrise or the beginning of the universe or something like that. And there's no AC because the windows are unable to hold a portable AC unit. We are close to the Highway 990, we are close to Highway 990, so there is always noise whenever the windows are open. And there is no view because of how tightly clustered the buildings are.
Now, can you describe your relationship with the defendant, Grayson Dula?
Grayson Dula has been renting Unit 2B for 2.5 years before the shooting. He was no problem at first, I rarely heard or saw from him, and he paid his rent on time.
Did anything happen to the defendant before the shooting?
He changed in the months leading up to the shooting. He was known as a landcarp, a person who was constantly complaining about the building or the tenants in the building and wanting management to fix it. And 3 months before the shooting, I heard from him at least once a week, and 9 out of 10 times the subject was noise. Most of the complaints had merit, and other tenants complained about the noise also. I told him to learn to get along with the noise because it wasn't that bad. And there was nothing threatening or belligerent about his frustrations.
Now, will you explain your relationship with John Umber?
John Umber has been renting Unit 3C for 1.5 years before the shooting. He's a decent guy, paid his rent on time, and he was handy in fixing things. He never really told me about them. I don't recall him ever complaining about another tenant, but he was known as the music man, someone who's always playing his music loud and willing to share his taste in music with the rest of the building. I received regular complaints about him and his music, known as the triple play. But when I contacted him about his complaints, he'd agreed to turn it down until the next time.
Was Grayson Dula the only person to complain about the triple play?
Grayson was not the only one to complain about triple play. For all other tenants complained about it too, but he was the most often one to complain about it.
Was that all your relationship with John Umber amounted to?
No, for we had a weird friendly relationship that we built up about the noise issue. So he even invited me to the party at the last Outback to celebrate his granddaughter's birth. On that night he was drunk and he went a little over the top with the threats, and especially with his son-in-law. But when he left, he was just like nothing had happened, and then him and his son-in-law were best friends again.
Was there anything that happened when you contacted John Umber about noise complaints?
That was actually the only time that he gave me any grief about turning down the music. It was about 1 week before the shooting. And that was the only time I ever talked to him about Dula. Because leading up to this event, the music was becoming more frequent. And I'm on the ground floor, so I don't normally hear the music myself. And when I talked to Umber about the complaint, he seemed agreeable to turn it down until I mentioned who can complain. John recognized Dula's name immediately, and his mood darkened considerably. He got really angry and started shouting at me. I'm tired of that gun lover trying to tell me what to do. You can tell Dula to either back off or get ready for my brand of open carry. That was the last time I talked to him.
What happened next?
When Grayson came down to ask me about how I handled the noise complaints, I warned him about the threats he made early and described the fight, flee, or get your gun scene from the party. I never mentioned John's name to Dula. I referred to him as the guy in 3C.
Now let's move on to the night of the shooting. What were you doing that evening?
I was sitting in my chair reading a book because it was too hot to sleep. Most people don't know that the portable ACs bring in more hot air than it does cool. And it was quiet until the noise started around 1 a.m.
What was that noise?
The noise was Umber's triple play, and I could hear each song clearly. It went on for about 20 minutes until it suddenly stopped. Then I heard two people shouting and screaming at each other. And then somebody yelling, "Leave me alone," or "Get away." And then I finally had enough. I went down to see what it was.
Now, what did you see outside?
I stood at the building corner. I saw a big man on his knees over by the cars, and then someone else standing about 40 feet into the parking lot. The kneeling man got off the ground and started charging towards the other person. The person stuck his arm straight out and shot the gun at the big man. And then he screamed something like, "Look what you did," or "Look what you made me do." It was one of those two phrases. I believe the scream came from the other person in the lot. The shooter then turned and sprinted straight into the building.
What did you do next?
I didn't want the shooter to get run over by a car, so I went over there and dragged him, and it turned out that it was John Umber. I applied pressure to the wound while I told some attendants to make a perimeter so no cars could come in. And then the EMTs arrived 5 minutes later.
Is this the first time an assault has ever occurred on your premises?
Not even the first time in 2017. The apartment buildings are like a micro world, and there's violence in the world.
Now, I have one final question. As an on-site manager living in the same apartment complex as both Grayson Dula and John Umber, what can you tell me about their relationship with each other?
I personally never saw them in the same building or anywhere else, but Umber was aware that Dula lived in the building in the floor below him. But I never mentioned John Umber's name to Grayson Dula.
Thank you.